Okay, so for decades,
imagine the jagged,
the U.S.
beautiful
government line
Japanese
was basically
maybe early 19th
supernatural
century
stuff,
fishermen,
psychic powers,
hardy
telepathy,
souls, are scanning the
seeing
waves
things
like they
far
always
away
do.
with your mind.
They're expecting
Pure
driftwood,
fantasy.
maybe debris
That's what
from
they told
storms,
everyone.
nothing
Yeah,
unusual.
that's the public face.
But then one morning in
Complete
1803,
skepticism.
something.
But while that was the
Something
official
truly
story,
extraordinary
behind
appears.
closed doors,
It's this
something
round, smooth, almost
something much
metallic-looking
stranger
vessel,
was apparently going
completely
on.
unlike any
Deep
boat they'd ever
inside
seen
the
before.
intelligence
Locals started
community.
calling it the
It's a really
Utsuro-bune,
interesting contrast,
which translates
isn't it?
to the
Publicly,
hollow
it's
ship.
all scientific dismissal.
And what they found inside,
Privately, the
even more
Pentagon, the
bewildering.
CIA,
A young woman,
they're clearly
pale-skinned,
wrestling with
really
something very
beautiful,
different.
clearly
These
foreign.
fantasies
Her
suddenly
features
become
were totally unfamiliar, and she spoke a language
serious
nobody could
strategic
understand.
issue.
Not a word.
Exactly. And
the most
that
striking
worry,
picture
that
is
sort of
clutching the
creeping
strange
fear
wooden
about
box,
psychic warfare,
really
it leads
fiercely
to one of
protective
the
of it. Wouldn't let it
honestly
out of her
most
hands, not even
bizarre
for a
and
second.
top-secret
You just
projects of
imagine
the
the
whole
confusion,
Cold
right?
War. Project
For the
Sunstreak.
fishermen, the officials who
I mean,
showed
just
up,
picture it.
this wasn't
An
just some
actual government
shipwreck. It was a
project
complete
trying to
riddle
weaponize
floating
the
ashore.
human mind.
So the
Funded
big
off the
question
books.
is, was this
Totally
just folklore?
And officially, the
You know,
cover
a local
story, or
legend
maybe
maybe
the initial
spun from
idea
cultural
was
anxiety about
remote
outsiders.
viewing.
Right.
Or was it
This
something
supposed
more, something
ability
real?
for
I mean,
trained
some people
to
think,
just
okay, maybe it was just wreckage from an early European
distant
ship.
places, secret
Rare,
enemy bases,
but
maybe even
possible
peek
in that
into the
isolationist
future.
era.
All just
But then
using
others
their
argue, no,
minds.
this sounds like
And we
something
should be
else
clear,
entirely,
this wasn't
maybe
some like
interdimensional.
side
An
hobby. It
ancient
wasn't just a few
UFO.
folks messing around.
Or even
this was a strategic
historical
move,
event
a
that got
direct
covered up somehow.
response to what they
The
thought
consistency of the
Soviets were doing.
accounts, which we'll
They
definitely
were
get into,
urgently
makes it
trying to
hard
get
to
an
just
edge
dismiss.
in
It really makes you
completely
wonder,
new kind of,
why isn't this story
battlefield.
like
And that's what we're
common
doing today. We're
knowledge?
going to peel
And that's
back those
exactly
layers
what
of
we're doing
secrecy.
tonight. This is
Really,
our deep dive
deep
into
dive
the
into
Utsuro-bune
Project
Enigma.
Sunstreak.
We're going to try and
the
peel
kind of
back
wild
the layers,
conspiracy
the
theories that are
myth,
still swirling
the actual
around it.
historical
because the
records.
story goes
some pretty
way
compelling
beyond
conspiracy
just
theories
psychic
too.
spying.
Oh,
See what
absolutely.
the original
They
sources
might have
really
cracked
tell us.
open the
goal
door
is
to,
sift
well,
through the
alien
evidence we
contact,
have,
maybe
look for
even
connections,
some sources
maybe
suggest
across different times
interdimensional
and cultures.
It gets pretty out there.
And
It
ultimately,
really
does. So we're gonna
ask,
look at
you
where
know,
it
what
came
does
from,
this
the really
bizarre
unsettling
event really
things that viewers
signify? How
reported
should we
seeing,
understand it?
the
It definitely
weird
challenges how we
overlaps
look
with
at
old
history.
occult stuff.
Okay, get ready, because this
and
is
these
where the
incredible
puzzle pieces
claims
start
about
forming some
contacting,
really intriguing,
maybe even
the
unsettling
unknown.
pictures. So yeah,
Right.
settle in.
So
This
let's
is
start
where
with the
things get
historical
weird.
accounts themselves.
So where did
Ground
Sunstreak
ourselves
even
there.
come from?
The earliest
It
surviving
really
records
kicks
we
off
have for
back
the
in the early
Utsuro-bune
70s. There was
story,
this sort
they
of
date back pretty
quiet
clearly to
panic
1803.
brewing
And
in
what's
the
really
intelligence
remarkable
world during
here
the Cold
isn't
War.
just that
Right.
the story
Word got
exists,
out
but
that
that
the
it's not
Soviets
just
were
one
pouring
source.
serious
It pops
money
up
and
in
effort into
multiple
parapsychology.
independent Japanese
And not
texts
just
from around
dabbling.
that
We're talking
time, like the
state-sponsored
Torn
experiments,
Shisetsu, that's roughly
telepathy,
Rabbit Garden
moving
Essay,
objects with
and
the
the
mind,
Hishuri
psychokinesis,
Kishu, which is
and
records
crucially,
of castaways.
remote viewing.
Plus some other
Yeah, and when
collections of
U.S.
strange
intelligence
tales from
picked
that
up on
period.
this,
And this
alarms went
consistency,
off.
well, that's
Big
a crucial
time.
point.
The
It kind of
Pentagon
separates
especially.
Utsuro-bune
You can imagine
from
the fear,
your
right?
typical
What if this stuff
sea
is
monster
real?
legend.
Even if it only gives a small
It
advantage.
suggests people
Exactly.
were
The
recording
U.S. can be
something they actually
completely
observed, or at least
blindsided
heard
in a
detailed
conflict
reports about.
that doesn't
An
use
anomaly.
bombs or
And that
spies
core
in the
story,
traditional sense.
the narrative
So
in
this
these
perceived
sources,
threat, this
it's
potential
incredibly
psychic
vivid, isn't
gap,
it?
fishermen
leads
in
directly
Hitachi
to the
province
CIA's
that's along
starting
Project's
Japan's
eastern
Eastern
coast.
Which was kind of
They
the
spot
umbrella
this
program.
weird
And under
vessel just
Stargate, you get
drifting. They
these
managed to tow it
sub-projects.
ashore.
Project
And that's when they get a
Sunstreak was
good
one of
look.
them,
The
run by the
descriptions are
Defense Intelligence
fascinating. It was
Agency, the
clearly circulated
DIA,
about,
mostly through the
3.5
1980s.
meters
Okay,
high, over
so
5 meters
Sunstreak
wide.
gets going.
Yeah, that's right.
And
3.5
on
meters
paper,
high, taller than a
its
basketball
job
hoop.
sounds
And over 5
well,
meters wide, like
almost
you said, maybe the
straightforward for
length
that
of a
world.
small park.
Recruit people,
But it's a
train
sea
them as
vessel.
remote
Right.
viewers.
And the description says the
Get
top
them to
half was
project their
wood,
consciousness,
but the bottom
basically,
half was reinforced
and
with metal
spy on
plates.
Soviet facilities.
And crucially,
gather
it had
intel.
these
Standard
windows
espionage,
of glass
just with
or
a
crystal
very
allowed them to see
unconventional
inside.
method.
But
The
that's
whole
not
thing
how
is
it
sealed
played
up
out,
tight.
was it?
It became
there's a
clear
woman
pretty
inside.
fast this
The
wasn't
accounts
just about
describe her
finding
as young,
missile silos.
maybe
No,
18 to
almost right
20,
away, the viewers
with red
weren't just
hair and
describing,
pale
you know,
skin.
submarine pens
Features
or
that
radar
would have been
installations.
incredibly
The data
uncommon,
start
almost
getting
alien looking in Japan back then.
Absolutely.
Weird how.
Very
Well, that was
striking.
the big
She
turning
wore
point,
these
though.
strange,
The viewers
elegant
started
clothing
reporting
made of
things that,
fabrics they didn't
based on our
recognize
normal
apparently.
understanding of physics
But
and
the
reality,
detail that really
shouldn't
sticks, the
exist.
Things
core
that
of the
shouldn't
mystery,
exist.
okay, is
that
now we're
box.
getting somewhere.
Yeah.
She clutched
The
a
information
wooden
they were
box that
bringing
she
back
guarded
was
fiercely.
pushing way
Wouldn't let
past
anyone anyone near.
boundaries
They
of
couldn't
what
understand
anyone
her language,
expected.
didn't know where she
It
came from.
fundamentally challenged
And
what
so
the program was even
eventually,
supposed to be doing.
They
So
just
tell me
pushed
about
her
these
and the vessel
viewers.
back out
They
to
weren't
sea.
just random people off
return
the
to the
street,
sea.
right?
Leaving
Many
this
had
huge
military
question.
backgrounds.
That's right, often military
And
personnel.
it's that consistency,
And they
like we
went through
said,
this
across
really
multiple texts.
specific,
That's what makes it so
structured
compelling.
training.
Most myths they shift and change
controlled
over time.
protocols
Details get
was the term,
altered.
like coordinate
But the
remote
Utsuro-bune
viewing or
accounts,
CRV.
remarkably
CRV, okay.
similar
So it wasn't
descriptions.
just
The craft,
like
the
closing
woman,
your
it
eyes and
really
hoping for the
forces
best.
No,
question.
no, very systematic.
Something unusual
They
was
might be
definitely
given just a
reported.
set of
Multiple
geographic
scribes felt it was
coordinates
worth
or maybe a
writing down.
random number
But
linked
what was
to
it
a
exactly?
target.
How reliable
Then they'd go
are
through these
sources?
stages,
I mean,
sort of
could multiple
drilling
writers have
down,
just copied
describing
one
sensory
popular story,
details,
making it
sketching
seem
impressions,
independent? Or does it
trying to
signify a real
build a
event that just
picture of a
defied
target they knew
explanation?
nothing
It's
about
more than just a
consciously.
story, it's a
Often
historical
something hidden
puzzle.
miles away,
And that
maybe even
puzzle leads us
sealed in
right
an
into this
envelope
whole
right there in the
folklore
room.
versus fact
And did it
debate,
work?
doesn't it?
Initially.
The mainstream
Well, the
historical
early
take
results
often
were
frames it as,
apparently
well, cultural anxiety,
intriguing. Impressive,
early
maybe,
19th
but
century
small
Japan
scale.
under the Tokugawa shogunate
sketches that looked
was
surprisingly
super
like a Soviet
isolationist,
factory.
very wary
Details
of
about a
foreign
hidden
contact.
bunker that
Extremely.
later
Sikoku,
matched
the
the
closed
spy
country
photos.
policy.
enough to keep the
So this
funding
idea of a
flowing,
mysterious
definitely.
foreign
so it
woman
had some
washing
legs.
ashore.
Yeah.
But then,
Maybe
like you
it just
said,
reflected
things
those
took a
deep
turn.
fears
A sharp
about
turn,
Western
yeah, because it's
intrusion.
one thing to
the
sketch a
unknown.
building you shouldn't
Like a
know about.
cautionary
It's something
tale
else
for a
entirely
society
when you're
trying to
trained
keep the world
military
out.
viewers start
It seems
reporting
plausible
experiences that
on the
just
surface.
It does seem
flat out
plausible,
defy the
but if
material
you
world
actually
as we
read
know
the
it.
accounts
Looks-
closely,
what-
the
what kind of
Utsuro-bune
things?
story doesn't
Well,
quite read like a simple
get this.
parable.
Some viewers started
The sources
reporting
focus on such
energy
specific,
beings.
almost
What energy
technical
beings?
details about the
Not
ship.
people,
Round,
not animals,
metallic,
just
with glass
conscious
windows.
energy
It's all very
forms that were
concrete.
apparently
These
watching them
descriptions
while they were
feel,
doing
I don't know,
remote viewing.
Watching the
startlingly
viewers,
modern
okay,
for
that's
1803.
creepy.
Right.
Almost
Others
uncanny.
claimed they weren't
They
just
aren't
talking
moving
about
across
sea
space
monsters or
or
magical
across
boats.
time.
They're describing a
Getting glimpses of
manufactured
ancient
object.
history.
Some scholars
or
even point out, look,
future
these
events.
descriptions
Whoa.
sound a lot like flying
Time travel.
saucers. People started purporting
That's what they
centuries
reported.
later.
Hmm.
There's one really
So
famous,
if it was just
or infamous
anxiety,
account.
why those specific
A viewer
weirdly
insisted they
advanced
saw
sounding
the
details?
Egyptian
Could it have
pyramids
been,
being
say,
built,
a
but not
clever
by
European
Egyptians,
castaway who
by,
built something that
quote,
looked high-tech to
tall,
the fishermen,
luminous entities.
even if it wasn't
Luminous
alien?
entities
It's a
building
thought.
the pyramids.
And it's
I mean,
that
that sounds
uncanny
like something from
modernity,
a,
that specific
fringe
detail.
documentary.
Exactly,
pushes us
except
past
these were
simple
reports
folklore,
coming
doesn't
from
it?
within
Straight
a
into the
classified
territory of,
military intelligence
well,
program.
potential
That's what
cover-up
makes you stop and
whispers.
think.
This is
Yeah,
where the
definitely.
conspiracy
Any other
theories
examples?
really
Oh
start
yeah,
to gain traction.
another one, just as strange.
Was Utsuro-bune
A
just a
viewer
collective
claimed they
anxiety
found
dream,
hidden
or was it
spacecraft
maybe
under
a
the ice
sanitized
in
version?
Antarctica.
A downplayed
Hidden
report of a
spacecraft.
real
Oh.
encounter
Like
with
UFOs.
something
It
unknown,
seems to be the
advanced tech.
implication.
If that's the case, then who
And
was she? A
guarded
stranded
apparently
European?
by some kind of
Maybe
consciousness
an
that resisted
interdimensional visitor.
intrusion.
That's a
like
leap.
a psychic
Or
guard
something
dog,
even
but
stranger,
not a
something
dog.
totally
Okay, wow.
outside our
So
current
these reports,
framework.
were they
And
just
one of the most
ignored, filed away as
haunting
crazy?
details,
Well,
the one that
officially,
really
a lot of this
fuels
stuff was
those more
probably
out there
downplayed or
theories.
buried.
Is
Yeah.
classified
absolute
deep,
focus
but
on protecting
inside the
that box.
project,
Refuse to let
the
it go,
whispers
no
started.
matter what.
The
It
idea
feels like
took
the
hold
key,
that
doesn't it?
maybe
It really
remote
does.
viewing
Like the
wasn't just
absolute
about
center of the
spying on the
mystery.
Soviets
She's in this
anymore.
completely
Maybe-
alien situation,
maybe it was
facing
about
who
making
knows what,
contact.
and yet
This is
that
where it
box
gets
is
even
her
stranger,
priority.
right?
The
Totally.
connection
and
or
the
the apparent
theories about
connection
what was
to
in the box are fascinating.
occult practices.
Yeah.
And they
yes,
come
that's
straight
another
from
layer to this
interpretations
whole
of the
thing that's
sources
just
and folklore.
fascinating.
Some
People
suggest
within
maybe
the program
the head of a
apparently
dead
started
lover,
noticing
which
these
is
disturbing
tragic, but it
parallels
fits certain Japanese
between
ghost
the
story
remote
motifs,
viewing
legends about
techniques they were
devotion.
developing and
Known
refining,
trope,
and
Others think
practices
no, it was
found
advanced
in
technology,
really old
a device, an
occult
artifact she was
traditions.
transporting,
Occult
maybe a
traditions, like
communication tool,
methods
navigation,
described in
something
esoteric
from her
orders.
world. And
Groups
then you
like
get the
the
idea that it
Hermetic
was a
Order of
power
the Golden
source,
Dawn,
like
or
literally
the
the key to the craft
Okay.
itself.
They were looking at
essential for it
rituals
to work, or
astral
maybe for her
projection,
survival.
achieving
Right.
trance
But why guard it
states,
so fiercely,
intense
risking
visualization
everything? If it was
exercises,
just, say,
the whole
a
idea
memento.
of separating
Exactly.
your
That
consciousness
refusal,
from your physical
even in that
body.
extreme
Wait, so the
situation, it
technique
strongly
Sunstreak was
suggests the
teaching its
box was
military
way
viewers.
more than symbolic.
Seemed
It was
to
vital,
directly
essential,
mirror
either to
these
her
ancient
or her
mystical
mission
practices.
or the
It's quite
craft.
striking when
And
you
if
put
you
them
lean
side by
into that
side.
So the question
extraterrestrial
becomes,
idea for the
Was the
Utsuro-bune.
Pentagon,
Well,
was
then the
the
box might
DIA
very well have been some kind
inadvertently
of
stumbling
alien
onto,
artifact.
or maybe
Technology,
rediscovering
information,
some kind of ancient
something that
technique,
1803
something
Japan
mystics
just
and
wasn't
secret
equipped to
societies have been
understand.
using
Maybe
for
couldn't even
centuries.
recognize for
That's
what
the
it was.
implication,
It
yeah.
feels like an
Was
unanswered
this military
question.
intelligence
Almost a
program
lost chance.
actually an
Okay, let's shift
unwitting
back
or
to the
maybe
craft
witting
itself for
occult
a second.
experiment?
Because the physical description of the
amazing thought.
Utsuro-bune is
And
just
it
so
didn't stop
striking.
there, did it?
People often
The
point out
experiences
it's
got darker.
They
chilling
did.
modernity.
Some viewers
We're
started
talking a
reporting
distinct, almost
encounters
perfectly
with
round
actively
shape.
hostile
A
presence.
metallic
What's
face,
hostile?
not wood like
How?
every other
They
boat
describe,
Glass
entering a
windows letting you see
location
inside.
mentally,
And a
projecting
sealed
their consciousness
interior,
there only
clearly
to be
designed to
confronted,
protect whoever
not by
was
human
inside from the
guards,
sea, maybe
but
even from
by
the
what
air.
they described as shadowy entities, things that seemed fully aware of their psychic intrusion and actively tried to block them or push them out.
Aware of them.
From that
Yeah.
era.
Like
Those were
psychic
timber
guards.
holds.
Essentially,
Pretty
yes,
recognizable. It doesn't sound
which
like a local
raises a
fishing boat
really
or merchant ship
profound
either.
and
What's so
frankly
compelling and what
unsettling
really fuels
possibility.
this
Which is?
speculation how
Well,
much
if the
does
human
description
mind
sound
can
like
actually travel
later
outside
reports
the
of
body,
UFOs, you know?
maybe
Spherical
those
or
non-physical
disc-shaped
realms
craft,
aren't empty.
often
Maybe
described
other
as
intelligence has
part
already
metal or
lived there.
And maybe they don't appreciate
moving in
visitors.
strange ways.
Exactly.
Now, the sources
Entities
don't
that
say it
really
flew,
didn't want
obviously,
people
but
like
they
the
describe a
Sunstreak
vessel that
viewers
just
poking
doesn't fit
around. It
any
makes you
known
wonder,
maritime context of the
was
time.
Sunstreak
And that's where the
opening doors
conspiracy
that had
angle
been
really takes
deliberately
off, right?
shut
The
for
idea
a
that
very
maybe
long time,
the
for a good
Utsuro-bune
reason.
wasn't
Okay,
a
so if
ship
they
at
were opening
all,
doors,
maybe it was a misinterpreted flying
what exactly
object.
did they find on
A
the other
craft
side?
meant for the air.
Because some of the
that
most
somehow ended
sensational
up
claims
stranded in
are
the
about
water.
well,
The wrong
aliens.
element, it makes you ask.
Extraterrestrial.
Was this
Absolutely.
Japan's
This is where the
first
story
recorded
really
UFO
goes into high
sighting?
gear.
We actually have
before the term
declassified
even
documents,
existed.
fragments,
An event
hints really that
accurately
suggest
recorded by witnesses,
some
but
remote
just viewing
viewing
sessions
sessions
were
through the lens of the
specifically
technology they
Mars.
knew.
Mars.
Okay,
Like
but here's
the
where the
planet
mystery
Mars.
really,
The
really
planet
begins.
Mars. There's one
Despite showing up in
particularly
multiple
famous
independent
session,
sources,
often
the
cited,
Utsuro-bune
where a viewer
is
gives
basically
this
absent
incredibly
from official
detailed
Japanese
description.
records.
They
No
claimed
government decrees
they were
mention it, no
observing
official
Mars
investigations
millions of
documented.
years ago.
Millions.
And crucially,
Millions.
no
And they
artifacts
described
were saved.
seeing these
Nothing
tall
exists today.
beings
It's
sheltering
almost like the
inside
whole event was
massive pyramidal
deliberately
structures.
Pyramids on
erased.
Mars.
Pyramids on Mars,
Scrubbed
as their
from the
planet
records,
was leaving
dying
just
around
these
them.
scattered
A
unofficial
civilization
accounts that
facing
weirdly all
extinction.
kind of agree
Wow.
with each
Okay.
other.
Yeah.
It's
That's
that
quite a claim.
silence, that
It
official
is, and it wasn't
silence
just
that's
Mars.
so loud.
Other sessions
And
allegedly
that
targeted
disappearance
well-known
from the
UFO
official
hotspots
history.
and crash
Well,
sites
it's on
fertile
Earth,
ground for
including
theories.
Roswell.
course
Some
Roswell had to
scholars
be in
argue,
there.
okay, the
And viewers
Tokugawa
reportedly
government
describe
being so
seeing
paranoid about foreign
non-human
influence just
alien
suppressed the
artifacts,
story,
all hidden
tactfully.
away deep inside
Not just to keep
classified
order, but
government
to control
facilities.
any
So
information
not
about
just
the
seeing
outside
things
world.
far
Maintain
away,
that fragile
but seeing
isolation.
things the
Any
government was
encounter with
actively
something
hiding.
truly unknown,
That's the
especially
claim.
something from
It
outside
suggests
their
the viewers
borders,
weren't
would have been
just
seen as
passive
incredibly
observers. They were
destabilizing.
potentially
Makes sense.
uncovering evidence
Others
of an
whisper,
alien presence
maybe
that was
officials
being
didn't just
actively
suppress it.
concealed.
Maybe they
And then
took the
there's
woman in her
Wright-Patterson Air
craft,
Force
hid them
Base,
away.
right?
Secret
Always comes up
archives.
in
I mean,
these
Japan
stories.
does have
Right,
these incredible
Patterson.
hidden archives.
Another chilling
like the
account
Shushin
involved a viewer
repository
who
in
claimed
Nar,
they psychically
full of
entered a
ancient
hidden
imperial
chamber
treasures,
deep
classified
underground
stuff.
there.
And what do they
Could
say?
remnants of the
Containers.
Utsuro-bune still be
Holding
locked away in some
biological
forgotten
specimens
storehouse like
that were
that?
completely
Maybe.
unlike
Wow.
anything
Or
known on Earth.
maybe
Alien
later on,
bodies,
foreign
basically.
powers found
That's
out about
the
the story and
strong
removed the
implication.
evidence.
And
To
another
stop
viewer,
awkward
possibly
questions about
targeting the
UFO
same
contact
location
way
or a
before
similar
Roswell,
one, it
claimed
wouldn't
they
be the
witnessed
first time
some kind of
inconvenient history
psychic
got buried.
network.
And now,
Something
let's really
connecting
dive
human
into the more
minds to-
speculative theories.
Well, something
Still
else,
compelling,
something
though,
beyond
and they
our
do
world,
spring from the
out
source
among the
details.
stars.
A psychic For network UFO connecting us to
enthusiasts,
aliens.
That was the
Utsuro-bune is
report.
often
So
seen
you
as
look
one
at all
of the
these accounts
earliest
together,
ancient
Mars,
alien encounters we
Roswell,
have on record.
Wright-Patterson,
You can
psychic
see why.
networks.
The
It
connections
paints
are
a very
very
different
different.
picture than just
The
spying on
craft's
the
round-shaped
Completely
echoes
different.
classic
If you take
flying
these reports at
saucers.
face value,
The
even
woman's
just
appearance,
partially, the
pale
implication is
skin,
huge.
red hair,
Project
strange language
Sunstreak
suggesting someone
might have
literally
started as
not of
espionage,
this
but it
world.
seems to have pivoted.
And then there's that
It
box
became
again.
about
piece
preparing
of
for
alien
contact
tech.
with non-human
A communication
intelligence.
device.
Or maybe
A
more
power
cynically,
source.
about making sure
You
that
follow that line
contact
of
remained
thinking,
a
it raises some
secret,
really
kept
poignant,
far away
almost
from the
sad
public
questions.
eye.
Like, was
But
the
the theories
Utsuro-bune
don't
an
even
alien
stop
ship that
at
malfunctioned?
ETs from other
Crashed
planets,
into
do
the
they?
ocean?
Some people
Was the
take it
woman
even
its
further.
pilot
That's right.
stranded light
There's a
years
whole
from home
other
in a
branch of
totally
theory
hostile
suggesting
environment?
Sunstreak wasn't
Imagine.
just
If that's the
encountering
case, then the decision to
extraterrestrials,
just
but
push her back
potentially
out to sea, it might have been
interdimensional
this huge
beings.
lost
Interdimensionality,
opportunity.
humanity's
Parallel
chance to actually
universes or
understand
different
aliens
planes
in
of context
existence.
thrown back into
Exactly,
the
something
waves
beyond
before we
just
even knew what we
aliens
were
in the
looking at,
traditional
what might we
sci-fi
have
sense.
learned.
Viewers
But, okay,
reported
what
experiences
if it
where they felt
wasn't
they'd slipped out of our reality altogether.
What if the
Slipped
Utsuro-bune
out.
was
into
interdimensional?
landscapes they described
This
as
theory
utterly
offers a different
alien,
kind of explanation, just as
surreal,
fascinating.
populated by forms
Some
of
theorists
consciousness
suggest
that just
the
didn't
craft
fit
wasn't
into
crossing
any human
space, but maybe
categories, not just
slipping
beings
between
from other
realities.
stars, but maybe from
So the
other
woman's language?
dimensions.
Not just
Can you give an
foreign,
example?
but
What
literally
kind of
from
things
another
did they
dimension.
describe?
Unintelligible
The reports are
because
really
it follows
strange.
different rules.
One describes
and the
seeing
sea
this
itself,
massive,
often
complex
seen as this
geometric structure
mysterious
that seemed to
transitional
exist,
place
quote,
in folklore.
in between worlds.
Maybe it acted
like
as
a
a sort of
hub or a
liminal
gateway
space,
connecting
a boundary
different
between
realities.
A
worlds.
dimensional hub.
The
Okay.
Utsuro-bune
Others
might
describe
have
the
accidentally
entities
crossed over
themselves,
into our reality,
sometimes
maybe
through
through
some
temporary
temporary
rift,
rift,
almost
and
machine-like,
then
sometimes
vanished back into
completely
its own
formless,
dimension when they
just
returned it to the water.
presences.
Wow. Okay.
And they
If that's
communicated not
true,
with language,
then the
but maybe
Utsuro-bune
through
story
direct
isn't just about
telepathy,
UFOs.
or what viewers
It's
felt
potential
as
evidence, however
waves of
fleeting,
emotion,
parallel
Not
realities,
talking,
just
just
brushing up
feeling.
against
or
ours, leaving
pure
a
thought
weird
transfer.
ripple in history.
And
what makes
these
Utsuro-bune
beings, they
even
often
more
felt
intriguing is when you
incredibly
place it next
ancient,
to
like
other
they've
myths
been
and
around
accounts
for
from around the
millennia,
world.
watching Earth,
Doesn't exist
watching
in humanity.
Think
Some
about
seemed
India's
indifferent,
Vimanas.
others felt
These flying chariots and
hostile,
ancient
even
texts,
predatory.
sometimes said to go
Predatory
underwater too.
interdimensional beings.
Right, I've heard of those.
Yeah,
Or
that's pretty
Irish
terrifying.
legends
It puts a
of
whole
floating
new
fairy
spin on the
boats
idea of
carrying
contact,
mysterious
doesn't it? It's
women
not just
from
meeting
otherworldly
neighbors from another
realms.
star system.
Even some
It's
Native
potentially
American
bumping
traditions
into
talk about
intelligences
round
from
spirit lodges coming
entirely
down
different
from the
layers
sky.
of reality that might
When you look
operate
at
by
it that
completely
way,
different
Utsuro-bune
rules.
So the
seems to
conspiracy
fit into
theory
this
here is
bigger
that Sunstreak
global
found
pattern
this.
of mysterious
Essentially,
craft
yes.
appearing across
That the project moved
cultures,
beyond
across
just
centuries.
psychic spying, or even
Could
simple
these all
alien
be
contact.
different cultural
It
interpretations
became an
of
attempt
the
to actually
same
map
core
this
phenomenon?
interdimensional
Encounters with
to figure
maybe
out what
advanced
other
beings
kinds of
whose tech was
intelligence
just
share our reality
beyond
or
human
exist just
understanding.
outside our perception.
Which leads us
And
to
the reason it
maybe
all
the
got
most
shut down
unsettling
or buried,
idea of all.
according to the theory,
that the Utsuro-bune isn't
was because the
forgotten
findings
because
were
it was
just too
irrelevant or
disturbing,
just a weird folk
too
tale.
destabilizing.
Maybe it's forgotten
Discovering
because
that
it
we
was actually
share
too
our
important, too
existence
significant for us
with potentially
to casually know
powerful,
about.
exactly.
And
This is what
sometimes
some call the
hostile
conspiracy of
interdimensional
forgetting.
entities. What if governments,
That's
maybe
not something
the
you just
Tokugawa
release in a
shogunate
press conference.
initially,
It gets
maybe
locked
others
down
later have
deep.
known about the
Okay, so
reality
let's
of
talk
these
about
kinds of
the end.
encounters for a long time?
Officially, Project
What if
Sunstreak was
Utsuro-bune wasn't just a
terminated in the
quirky
early
story,
1990s.
but
That's
a
the
real
official story,
event
yes.
that was
And the
studied,
reason given was pretty
documented,
bland, right?
and then
Something like
deliberately erased from
inconsistent
the official
results
history
and budget cuts.
to keep the
Pretty
public
much
ignorant.
standard
A managed
bureaucratic
narrative.
language for pulling the
Precisely.
plug on
It wouldn't be the
something. Happens all
first
the time
time.
with government
Official
projects.
histories are
given
often
everything we've
crafted
just
to
talked about, a
smooth
lot of
over
people don't buy that,
inconvenient
do they?
truths.
No.
So especially something as
From a
disruptive
critical
as potential
perspective,
foreign, let alone
Many
alien
skeptics, or maybe
contact.
believers in the more
The
exotic
consistency
aspects,
we keep
argue
talking
that the
about
official
across those
termination was
independent
just
texts,
a
it really
smokescreen,
suggests something
a
real
cover-up.
happened.
To do what?
But
Hide
its
the
quiet
failures.
disappearance from
Or
mainstream
hide the
history despite
successes.
the
To hide the
details,
successes,
that
or at
hints
least the
strongly at
nature of the
deliberate
findings.
suppression.
So the
belief
conspiracy
is that
theory
the
isn't
project
that
didn't really
Utsuro-bune never
end.
happened.
It just went deeper
The conspiracy
underground.
is
Into
that it
black budget
did.
programs.
And someone,
more secret.
somewhere,
Exactly.
made
broken
pretty sure
up,
we'd forget
maybe
about it.
renamed,
So where
absorbed
does that
into
leave
other
us? What does this
classified
all mean?
initiatives where
What
it
was
could
the Utsuro-bune
continue without
really?
any public
Was it just a
oversight,
foreign
without
shipwreck,
awkward
tragically
questions,
misunderstood?
which leads to the
A
big
compelling
question,
folktale
why?
born out of Japan's intense
Why the
isolation?
alleged cover-up?
A story
And
that just
the
felt
answer,
incredibly
according to
real?
these theories, is
Was
pretty
it
fundamental,
UFO?
isn't it?
It's
Advanced
reality
reality-shattering,
stranded at sea
potentially. If
centuries
human
before we
minds
even
can
had a word for it,
genuinely
or
do
maybe,
these things,
just
access
maybe, a
information
visitor from
across
another
space
dimension,
and time,
briefly
make
caught in our
contact with
reality
non-human
before slipping away
intelligences,
again, leaving only
glimpse
this
ancient
ghostly
secrets
story.
or future
We may never
events,
know for sure.
the
The
implications
answers
are
aren't
just
clear.
enormous.
That
world
box
she
changing.
guarded.
Too much
It
power for
remains
the public to
unopened,
handle.
metaphorically
Or too much.
speaking.
Okay, so for
language,
decades, right,
untranslated.
the U.S.
The ship
government
itself,
line was basically
gone, drifting forever in the
supernatural
waves
stuff,
of mystery
psychic
and endless
powers,
speculation.
telepathy, seeing
But the
things far
story
away
itself,
with your mind.
it endures.
Pure fantasy.
Passed
That's what
down
they
through
told
these
everyone.
fascinating,
that was the public
surprisingly
face,
consistent
complete
accounts.
skepticism.
And maybe
But,
in that endurance,
while
there's
that
a
was the
deeper
official
truth.
story, behind
Humanity
closed
has
doors,
always
something,
encountered the unknown.
something
Long
much
before we
stranger
invented
was
terms
apparently
like
going
UFO.
on.
The Utsuro-bune
Deep
is part of that
inside the
long
intelligence
legacy.
community.
A forgotten chapter,
It's a really
perhaps,
interesting
in
contrast,
this
isn't it?
ongoing
Publicly,
conspiracy
it's
of
all
silence
scientific
that seems to
dismissal.
surround our
Privately,
brushes with
the
strange,
Pentagon, the
the
CIA,
The hollow
They're
ship,
clearly
the
wrestling with
Utsuro-bune,
something very
might have
different.
vanished
These
from the waters off
fantasies suddenly
Japan centuries
become
ago.
a
But its
serious
shadow, its
strategic
echo,
issue.
it still kind of
Exactly.
floats there on the waters
And that
of history,
worry, that
waiting
sort of
for you to
creeping
notice.
fear about
Maybe the
psychic
real mystery
warfare
isn't just
leads
what
to
happened
one of
back
the
then in 1803.
honestly most bizarre
Maybe the
and
deeper
top
mystery
secret
is why we
projects
seem
of
to
the
have been
whole Cold War.
encouraged,
Project
subtly or
Sunscreen.
not,
Mhm.
to forget
just
it ever
picture
happened at all.
an actual